What's going on, guys? In this one we're going to be working on some tiny test tube terrariums. So let's check it out. As with all great projects, this one starts with an Amazon box. I was just as confused as you. I don't know why they didn't tape it shut, but it made it here, so can't complain. You saw the thumbnail, so you know what we're working with today, but I just ordered a few of these small test tubes. I say a few, I think I got like 20, 24 or something. We're just going to be making 3 today. So get these pulled out, get them popped open. With all terrariums, it's going to be really important to have a false bottom. Basically what the false bottom does is it allows all the water to drain out of the substrate. Now that's important because if you have the substrate just sitting in the water, it's going to start to mold and grow all sorts of nasty stuff that the terrarium can't keep up with maintaining. So if you have your substrate sitting in water, your tank's probably going to fail really quickly. So as you saw there, we're going to be using activated carbon as our false bottom or drainage layer. In this one, for the substrate, I'm just using regular dirt. So now that we got those test tubes filled up, time to get the dog in the truck, go find us some plants to use. We're going to be using some native plants for these terrariums. I recommend this, especially when you're experimenting with new things, just because this is going to be the cheapest way to get plants. If you go to your local pet store or anywhere else to get plants, you know, plants aren't super cheap. We got a little canal right next to our house. Obviously, Ivory's always happy to be out. I was able to find just a few little plants growing along the bank. The reason I like to come to a canal is because we live in Utah, so it's a high desert. Everything's super dry, and in these closed terrariums, most of the time everything's going to be a lot more damp than our regular weather. So it's a lot better if they're already used to living next to the water. Somehow I was able to actually find some moss, which is pretty rare. As I was grabbing that, Ivory decided to go for a swim.
Come here.
We've had a lot of water this year, so the canals are pretty high. So she was getting sucked downstream a little faster than I think she was expecting. But she made it out. I grabbed a little bit of leaf litter just to maybe add a little bit more color to these small terrariums. And it was time to head back out.
Come here.
So I forgot to bring a plate or anything else to put everything on, so everything ended up in my cargo pocket. It's a great way to keep plants alive. Would highly recommend this. It's also a good way to get a bunch of dirt and mud in your washing machine so the wife can be upset, of course. But this is what we ended up with. We got some moss, some smaller plants, and I grabbed some sticks, that leaf litter, and some rocks for some hardscape just to see what we're working with. With each of these terrariums, I tried to get a few different elements just to get a variety of things to look at, kind of offset each other. A little bit of hardscape, a little bit of plants. But I won't go too deep into these. Planting these is fairly simple just because they are so small. At the same time, that's what makes them most difficult, is they're so small. I've got this long pair of tweezers that I'm using. It makes a big difference. Without that, I wouldn't have really been able to do much with this. So these long tweezers are something I just barely got, but I wish I would have gotten them sooner because they're super helpful even with the bigger terrariums, with planting and digging roots in and moving things around. So you can see I'm trying to mix it up with each terrarium, add a little different plant. They are all getting moss just because I feel like that greenery makes everything tied together. You can see that dirt doesn't have any water in it yet, so that moss is starting to drip a little water into that soil. We'll get a little water added here shortly. I don't know how this flower is going to do. It has a little bit of roots on it, but not too much. But I thought I added a little bit more to look at than the other terrariums had, so I figured we'd try it. If you've watched any of my other videos, you've probably noticed this video is going to be a little different. Decided to go more for just the build happening in the background, something you can kind of focus in on as things just slowly coming together with that voiceover. So if you're liking this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you're like, hey, this isn't too bad, I'd watch some more of these, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That'd really help me out. That way I can make more content like this in the future. Now in all these terrariums we are going to add what's called springtails. If you're not familiar, I'll link my video on springtails down below, but essentially they're just a cleanup crew. So any mold or anything that's going to grow in these terrariums, these springtails are actually going to eat. So they're just tiny little bugs. You can see them on the counter there. My wife's going to be so excited that I got these on the dinner table. They're harmless to everything else. They just eat that mold, and they keep your tanks nice and healthy and smelling really fresh. Next we're just going to add just a little bit of water. You don't want to add too much. I might have added too much, but then we got a nice time lapse here of that water slowly soaking through the dirt. Very satisfying. So here's what we ended up with. Each one of these terrariums kind of up close here. You can see, obviously with it being so small, you're kind of forced to keep it simple, but it's kind of good practice for all your terrariums. Usually the more simple you can keep it, the better it looks. Obviously in nature everything seems like it's just so much going on, but when you're trying to put it in your own terrarium, keeping it simple is going to be the best way to keep that nice natural look without getting it too cluttered. So you can see those springtails there just checking out their new home. Now we'll get these closed off. You're going to want to make sure you have a tight seal on all your closed aquariums so none of that water is evaporating or escaping. Then we're going to get these added to the closed terrarium shelf. Right now we don't have too much space, so they go in the main room, just on the shelf there. You can check out the 2-liter terrarium builds. But all in all, I think these turned out pretty cool. With being such small terrariums, I think they look really good. But as always, thanks for watching, guys. If you're still bored, I'll link up a couple of my other closed terrarium builds, and you can check those out as well.